Welcome, everyone, to the Disrupting Wellbeing podcast. I am very excited about today, mostly because not only do I have one guest, but I have two guests who are just looking fabulous. Let's just point that out to anyone watching on YouTube. They are in business, they are in leadership, coaching, so many different things. I've got Chinazom, I've got Ije. And I'm so excited to have you here because you're also a couple. Now, this makes me way too excited. I've said excited like 82 times in the space of a 1-minute introduction. Let me turn it over to you. Chinazom, tell us a little bit about you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Petra. As you can see, we are color coordinated and we are a couple. And you have definitely said excited several times.
Because I just am. It's the yellow. It's just working.
I'm very excited to be on here. I'm a mental fitness, what would we say, advocate. So I love to talk about mental fitness, which is what goes on the inside, how you take care of the dialogue, how you take care of managing the ego and rejuvenating yourself. And I've been talking about it since 2018. I'm a coach as well, also a consultant and advisor. But I'm also really happy to be here with my beautiful partner who's going to introduce herself. And we've been working together on Dreamcatchers Performance, which is our company. But I'm really excited for this conversation and can't wait to see where it goes.
I'll pass it over.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go for it.
And I'm Ije, and I'm just as excited as you, Petra. So like we all have that in common today. And I am a business strategy and transformation expert. My lens is primarily Lean Six Sigma. So looking at ways to disrupt in a really positive way using transformational change. I also recently, I think about a year ago, pivoted into coaching, leaned in hard. So now I do executive coaching and team coaching, and that's helped to bring in mindset shifts into managing change as well in business and also in our personal lives as leaders. So I'm excited to talk about this today.
I noticed from your LinkedIn that you've done CTI coaching, which is the Coach Training Institute for audience members, but also ORSC, which is my pathway as well. So I'm like, sister, we've been on a similar path.
You know what? I should have known because I think you mentioned there was a word that you used when you were on our show. And I was like, that sounds like ORSC. I was like,
she's one of them. Yeah.
I love it.
Can I just ask you a personal question? Because you know we're going there. Did you have, when you did your training, I don't know how long ago you did it, was there anything particularly transformative for you personally within kind of learning about coaching?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. In the corporate space, I'd always been a problem solver. That was my identity that I wore really proudly. You know, the more complex the problem, the more excited I was. And so I always saw my value add and really the value add of everyone around me based on how you can drive solving the problem. And when I transitioned into exploring coaching, I thought that was just going to be an extension of like my people leadership. I was going to help others like find their leadership voice and find their style and multiply their impact. But it was really about me. Because I had to do some deep thinking, some inner work on myself and start to realize how I kind of had over-indexed on certain parts of myself because of the roles I took on and because of that lens that I then adopted and really had kind of shut off other parts. So that's probably a whole TED talk, but you know, like the long and short of it was, yeah, that's really what prompted me to lean into coaching and then try and step back after that and say, how can I integrate all of those different parts, right? Like the head, heart, and soul. Like, how do I integrate all of that to really drive value? So that's the journey I'm on now.
And it is a journey, right? How beautifully put. It's like we help and heal others, but we're certainly learning ourselves. Now, I'm curious about, you guys are parents as well, right? You have one little one?
Two.
You got two. All right. Yep, it's all happening. So you've got two little ones. You figure out how to match outfits and you run Dreamcatchers as a business. Like, you are my superheroes. What was that like, the journey to like going into business together? Because I think that's a massive challenge as a couple to like layer on all those pieces. I don't know. Is it as tricky as it seems to me? Chinazom, I'll let you dive in first.
Okay, first. It was very, very scary and very, very tricky as well. So when Ije decided that she wanted to be a coach, I would lie. First inside, I was like, oh my God, why did you do this? I didn't realize Ije had always been the safety net. So while I was trying to do coach, trying to build, so I was just thinking in my head, no, pick anything else. But then I had to remember when I had the same epiphany back in 2018 in Croatia, when I decided this is what I wanted to do. She 100% supported me. So what actually came out of my mouth was, that's the best idea, baby. Go for it. And I won't lie, the first 3 to 4 months was really tough. And it's still tough now because you have to learn how to communicate at such a higher level that I didn't even realize. Because a lot of the times where you think the other person's upsetting you and you think the other person's annoying, you have to keep stepping back and reflecting and realizing it's actually your own crap that's coming into the way. And that was getting your ass handed to you on a constant basis every day is very hard. But deep in my soul, I don't know why, I knew that this was the right decision. And it was actually when I wrote the book, that's when it actually this all started. Ije was the one who helped promote the book. And I just realized of all the other people I hired to help promote the book, no one fought my corner harder than her. So I just knew, as painful as it is, this is the only person that's going to challenge me, push me, stretch me. So even now, I won't lie, it's yielding the most fruit ever, but it's also tough. So I wouldn't just say for anyone who just wants to jump in, it's not easy, it's not tough. You have to keep doing the work, and you have to keep doing the thing about communicating on a deeper level, which I think is quite hard when the pressure is on, to not let your ego get in the way, to not just get angry and just say whatever, to actually keep communicating at that deep level. But it's also the most rewarding thing because you get to spend all the time building something that you're passionate about with the person that you love the most. So
Oh, I just found our Instagram shot right there. Our little reel is going to be that one, Chinazom. But I think, like, as a business owner, I've worked with co-founders or tried to work with co-founders, or like, so even not being in a relationship, that relationship of business co-founders is really intense and takes a lot of kind of peeling back layers of what are the unsaid things, what are the intentions for the dreams or hopes that might sound good in having a drink and going, oh, we should do this, right? Let's build that. And it's kind of going behind the scenes. Ije, what's been your experience, or how would you add to that?
I would say I'd been a fan for many, many years, right? So I had watched him start off this business like nearly a decade ago, and it had always been like a consumer of the content, someone to kind of think through things, etc. But I hadn't really been involved. So when I saw this opportunity to help out with the book, I didn't think beyond that. I really just was like, this is something that we need to do. I want to be a part of it. And so I just leaned in and got curious about things that he maybe historically wouldn't have focused as much time on, like, sort of like the more content creation bits around the marketing and branding and things like that. And so I wasn't really involved in the coaching part of this business at all. My mind wasn't there. And then when I started to kind of have my own reflection as I was thinking about what next for me, and I decided to do coach training, that's when I realized, oh no, this is his lane historically. You have lanes, you have roles in your relationships. Like, it's what you rely on, it's what to some degree makes it work, right? So I have my own lane and he has his own lane, and now he's encroaching on his lane. And I remember asking him a couple of times, like, how do you feel about this? This is your thing, how do you feel about me entering this space and contributing to it and challenging it, etc. And he told me verbally he was okay with it. I don't know now if but it's one of those things where, and so that kind of gave me like that, like, green light to say, make it your own, like, come up with your own version. And my version is very different from him because we have different energies, even though we overlap in a lot of really critical, powerful ways. So that was really important. I will say that if we weren't both coaches, constant, like having done like professional coach training and doing that ongoing work and working with clients, I think we would have struggled with parts of that coordination and the parts of that evolution that are happening simultaneously but separately. I don't know if that made sense. Like, it's like you're doing your own thing, you're like growing in and of yourself, and then you're also creating this joint entity that is its own being, and you're putting that into the world. So coordinating both sides of that is really tricky. I think the coaching really helped. Sometimes too much, because then I'm like, are you coaching me in this conversation right now? And he, or I'll say something and he's just like, what's with all the coach questions? Why are you asking me what are you aware of? So like, also fine. And sometimes it's too much. Sometimes there's so much excitement and We can't really shut it off. And I think we're still learning some of that balance, me more so than him, because it's newer for me and I'm super excited. But I think it came full circle for me in terms of telling me that there's a there here, like there's something here when we launched team coaching under the umbrella of Dreamcatcher's performance, because that was like my baby. That was like my envisioning how to bring all the parts of my experience and contribute it under the mission of Dreamcatchers. And so once we started seeing the impact that was having on leaders, some of whom he had been coaching for many, many years, that's when it became clear that this isn't just like a nice to have, this is actually essential, and how amazing that we get to build it together.
I wanted to just add, what you said, Petra, about the things that are not being said. Since having to work with Ije, I've had to journal so much. I've never journaled. Like I feel the whole
Get it
book
on the page. Yeah.
Because like what she said, where coaching was my own lane, and she said, "Are you okay with this?" And then I would have to keep journaling. Sometimes if she's doing something, I wouldn't be okay with it, and I would feel a bit strained. But then I'd have to journal and process it quickly and think, but what's actually the intention? What's the intention there? And then also I had to call things out sometimes with Ije, where I would be shining the light, bringing her in, but then I say one thing, and then it's like, oh, you're trying to control it. So it was really hard. You have to keep bringing all this stuff to the forefront. But sometimes it's a bit tiring as well, because like when she starts coaching me, I'm just like getting a mirror. I'm like, is that what I'm like? Is that what I'm doing to you for this? Because it's really annoying. So,
but that's interesting. Wait, Ije, has it been like that before you became a coach?
100.
Now that you like,
100%.
Now that you get it?
Because I even called it out one day and was like, what's this? I asked you that question and I wanted to hear from my husband, and you replied to me as a coach. And you know what his response was? I'm always a coach. It's a core part of who I am. I don't take that. You remember when you said that? And I thought, what is this? This is no longer a profession. This is like a ministry. It's a calling.
Yes.
It never ends.
I never said that again. I learned my lesson. When it came back
Door slammed and you learned your lesson.
When it came back the other way, I was like, yeah, you do need to take the coaching hat sometime. Take it off and throw it away.
Yeah, you eat some humble pie. Yeah. But it crosses over, doesn't it? With all roles, it's like as you say, the fact that you're doing the work through your own coaching journeys can help, but it also means we can run before we can walk. We can both be in a different place on a different day. So one person might be in coach role, the other person's like in parent role or finance or these other things, and there's the kind of clashes. So I love the journaling. It's like having a version of Ije. What's your version of journaling? Like, is it talking to a friend? Is it like, what do you do?
Video journaling, basically talking to myself with the transcript service running in the background.
Whoa.
Yeah, literally. And that's what
I don't want those kind of recordings. I need to burn my journals after I fill them up.
Only private and confidential, but it's the only way that I can get it out of my head without constantly going to him to be like, oh, so yeah.
But that's beautiful, because sometimes you have to work it out yourself, and not, I think like unhealthy relationships perhaps are just, my first thought is my truth, and therefore I'm going to fling it at you. You've got to, and then we get conflict, right? That's the unhealthy type of conflict.
Yeah. Or you have the opposite of that, where you just shut down completely, or you don't share certain parts. Meanwhile, all this change is happening for you and the other person doesn't have a clue.
But I'm going to say, I have learned that stream of consciousness is not always the best thing. Like sometimes you do need to go and process it.
Reflect.
And then before I used to be like, okay, that's what I'm feeling. That's the truth. Let me share it with Ije. And then when I share it, I'm like, no, that was not what
that is a mess.
So since journaling, I've been able to, I kind of leave voice notes. And when I leave the voice note, it completely lands in that was the intention. That's why I wanted to share with you. So yeah. Everything that comes up in your head should not be shared all the time.
And I'm glad you say that, because it's almost like people think that there's this thing about your whole self or your authentic self, right? If we think about the workplace, right? And this notion that, well, this is me, take it, like this is, you just have to handle it. If you're triggered, that's on you, right? Yeah. But there is something about the art to reflection, communication, like what do I want to say and what comes into the middle. I mean, are you guys noticing that just in the workplace, this kind of dirt flinging and people just trying to be themselves, but it's not useful, I
Yeah,
guess.
100. I mean, useful is the right word. Like that's the like underline, right? Because it's like, what are the intentions? And then who is this information for? Is it for you or is it actually for them? And I've found like both in professional settings and privately, oftentimes when I feel really, really passionately about something, it's probably because a part of that is triggering me in some personal, deeply personal way. And, hashing out with that other person is only going to get me but so far. And the coach
Mm.
training and the coaching work helps with that because you have to constantly do that inner reflection for yourself and then like serve as a sounding board or hold space for others to do it for themselves. So you're forced to have to kind of confront that on an ongoing basis. But it is a paradigm shift. It's a different way of kind of sorting through things so you're not projecting. And I think it is a great muscle for all of us. We should all like try and build that. It's a lifetime's worth of work.
Every time when we used to use the word bring your whole self, and especially when you're from a minority and the workplace is not conducive to that, you always feel like, oh, I should just say whatever or just throw everything out. But no, you have a responsibility to actually say what is useful and intentional. Because I've found that sometimes if you don't process what's triggering you, you're actually carrying something from, I don't know, a few years back to come into that space, which it doesn't need to be said in that space. So I think you still have to do the work when you're bringing your whole self to actually make sure that you're saying what you mean, and it's actually going to have it's going to land in the right way in that space.
Because otherwise you just get frustrated, right? Because it didn't land, and then you're like, nobody understands me, nobody gets it, right? Ije, sorry, what were you
Yeah, no, I
saying?
was just going to say we had recently been talking about literally just had happened just maybe a week or two ago this topic of psychological safety. When you're in groups, which is every time that you're not asleep, effectively you're in some conversation or relationship with another human being. And particularly in work contexts or where there isn't as much familiarity or comfort, that can really stack up. And so we were discussing like whose responsibility is it to create psychological safety? Like we know best practice and data shows that it's a collective effort and that the leaders of that space, those who have authority and rank, serve in a greater capacity towards enabling that. But there's also a responsibility on your part as the individual because only you know what you need to feel psychologically safe. And like what you need is different from what the person next to you needs. And all the layers driving that are so multifaceted and constantly evolving. So there's a responsibility, a personal responsibility of understanding based on where I am in my own journey, my understanding of myself and my needs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What do I need to feel safe in this environment? And then in terms of what's in my power, what can I do? Because I think there's this sense of disempowerment that happens where it's like the leader didn't say this or this wasn't there. Like I'm so unsafe, I'm triggered, I can't function. But like, what part can you do? And that's something we just recently talked about just a week or two ago. And it's a concept that I would love to see more conversation around.
It's radical honesty, it's self-awareness, right? And like it has to start with that personal reflection. Of course the content, but that means the leader needs to be doing that too. Self-awareness, personal reflection, and how they're integrating into the group, right? And perhaps a higher responsibility to challenge behaviors because of that rank. But it's each, like everyone makes up the culture. And I think there's this sort of us and them of like, well, it's their responsibility. You talk to the leaders and they're like, well, we gave them all these benefits. It's their responsibility, right? Why aren't they using what we gave them, right? And so this is the conflict. And I'm like, well, you both need to kind of be in the conversation. Chinazom, I'd love to get into mental fitness with you because I know that's your wheelhouse and just performance and like because we're when I approach companies and we talk about mental health, very quickly we're talking about poor mental health. We're talking about, okay, what do we do when someone's struggling? What number do they call? What resource do they get? But I'm like, how are we not integrating the conversations about performance and mental health? And so I love that you use the mental fitness because that kind of brings them together. Just talk us through what your version of mental fitness is. What does it include, do you think?
Well, great question, because I just had to define it because EJ keeps asking me to define it. And it actually came about when I was working with athletes, when I realized that mental fitness was so important for performance. And also, I realized we keep talking about mental health, and it has this stigma of something's gone wrong and we need to fix it. But I was like, but when you have your mental health, how do you protect it? How are you proactive to like understand what gives you that mental fitness and make sure that you do everything every day to keep it, to maintain it? And then this is why I started to come up with this idea of what's going on inside. It's the stuff that we can't see. What's that inner dialogue with yourself when you wake up? How do you monitor your emotional energy? Like, because when I ask people, like, what's your emotional energy? Is it a 7? Is it a 5? Okay, if it is, how do you know? Where did that number come from? And then every time you go and perform, I see this in the corporate space where people go and they travel here, they give this presentation, they go and do that. Okay, how do you recover? Because you've just emptied the tank out. Like no athlete would ever do that and not come back and like, I need to go and recover. I need to go and take massages and things like that. And then the most important thing is how do you rejuvenate? Because people don't understand that you need to remind yourself, why are you doing this? Like, what's the why? And you have to keep tapping back into that to like make sure you rejuvenate yourself. And managing the ego is another big part, because if you don't actually tune into your ego, your self-image, your identity, understand what's driving you, to make sure that you're managing it and you see the successes that you have. Because one question when I ask people, tell me something good that's happened, or so they can never, they struggle. Tell me something bad that's happened. Oh my God. Like, so
yeah.
So you need to keep like reminding yourself, like almost switching the brain to like, oh, I did this. Oh, this was amazing. You know, and that's all that part of the mental fitness where you're kind of filling up the tank and getting yourself ready to like, this is who I am. So that when it's time to perform, you're not coming from this place of, oh my God, you're actually coming from the place of, I'm ready to give the best. And I always feel like I'm so amazed that we didn't get taught this in school. And we should have been taught this, because I feel mental fitness is the prerequisite for performance at work, in your life, wherever. And I wish that we were taught this and more.
Well, and Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game, right? And like zooming out on your whole life, or the long term. And you guys are in business, right? It's not just the short term win. It's how do we sustain that performance or mental fitness for the long term, for the dips, for the ups, the downs, all the things, right? And I kind of like that perspective, because we get very like blinkered, we get very like this deadline or Friday or whatever your marker points are of like absolute, work ethic that would push anyone to burnout, right? Is there an Ije? I know you work with teams and stuff. Like, is there a perspective around mental fitness just to help that kind of team performance long term?
Not as much as I would like. Let me say that. I think there's starting to be more conversation around this, because this environment of constant transition and restructuring and realignment and downsizing has been happening now for a few years, and on the back of the pandemic. So now folks are finally having conversations, but there's still a big gap, right? Because we still have a disconnect between what we know and what we practice. That's really what it comes down to, right? It's like you mentioned it when you came on Real Talk. It's just that thing of like, when the stakes are really high, everyone just kind of goes into the same default mode that we've all been conditioned to do for so long. And even as leaders with the best of intentions, we're having a hard time actually like doing what we say ourselves, right? So it's like, and so those around you are seeing that disconnect, which undermines the entire point of what you're trying to like build. So from a team perspective, it's really been around getting clear on the fact that there are different stages, right? You can be a group of rock star subject matter experts just coming together to meet the parts of the job description, right? For whatever the goal is for the team. Or you could actually be a team, right? With a sense of shared purpose that is compelling enough. The dream is big enough for you to see your own dream within that and to feel inspired and motivated by that, right? So you're working together and you're figuring out, what am I strong in? What am I not? And that helps you manage your mental fitness. It's just that sense of, my like shortcomings aren't a weakness. They're an opportunity for the other person to shine. But then when we get to high performing team, that's when we really take it up a notch, because there, each member is just as focused on the other person's personal growth and development as they are on themselves. That's when we really start to see that magic happening. But unfortunately, it's very rare for us to get there. I've only had glimpses of it myself. So, a lot of it is aspirational, but we do have a good sense of what good looks like. So I'm very positive around a lot of the discussions, like the conversations you're driving, Petra, conversations around how can we reimagine the workspace and how we show up are going to be what move us closer towards creating spaces where we can actually feel fulfilled at work. It's a crazy concept like fulfilled at work, but it would be lovely because we spend the bulk of our waking hours there. So that would be awesome. So that's really kind of the focus is really about saying, hey, yes, you've got great goals for the team. I don't even focus so much on well-being because that word is also very loaded. It's just about understanding what does it look like to build real, meaningful relationships with each other, right? And have that mutual support help drive the team forward.
Community, meaning, shared goals, have your back. So that trust piece that you talked about earlier. So there's so many building blocks that are part of the prevention side when it comes to mental fitness, mental health. Chinazom, would you add anything there just to the team element?
Well, yeah, actually, EJ doing the team coaching started to make me realize actually what it is that I'm really driving for now, because I've been focusing on mental fitness for the individual. But every time I'd coach people and then they'd go off 6 months, 9 months later, they come back and they're kind of almost broken again. And I'm like, what happened? And then when I saw EJ doing the team coaching with one of my clients, I realized, oh my God, like they go off into this system, this group, this team, and it's not set up for sustainable performance. It's literally, so I started to realize now in the workspace, you actually have to start creating those conditions that allow people to bring the mental fitness to play. And I started to think about bringing joy back to work. And I know that sounds crazy, but I spoke with the person who wrote this book called Chief Joy Officer, and we can't wait to actually have a conversation with him. And that's where I realized if you do accept that there is, and I know it's a dirty word, spiritual side, all human beings, we have the stuff that's going on inside. Well, how can you create a work environment that allows someone to come in and flourish and have that joy? Because I believe 100%, because I saw this happen when I was working in investment banking. When the financial crash happened, when you actually give people that joy, that responsibility, they give it back to you tenfold. Well, the problem is we have this system where once we're going through hard times, we need to step on people's necks. We need to bring fear in. And it's like, it doesn't work. It leaves dead bodies all over the place and it's just not sustainable. And I really now realize that we need to change the environment so that the environment actually allows you to mental fitness and joy. And I 100% believe that people will just surprise you.
Yeah, I agree. Because people think that we're like, oh, how do we build psychological safety? Not realizing that in those times of crisis, you can erode it. Like you can go -10, but just by how you dealt with a crisis, right? So those are the moments. I actually had somebody ask me for advice earlier today. A scale up, so you get the startup vibe, right? But a little bit bigger than that. So there's structures. There's a few different things. And the question was, hey, there's burnout. We know there's burnout. So this person was in HR, right? So there's burnout and we're working at 1,000 miles an hour all of the time. We can't afford to hire new people. So it means people have to do basically 2 jobs. So what's happening is a cycle of people going off, people taking time off, people taking time off. When they leave, the people who are left have more work to do, right? And so it's becoming this cycle. And I guess the one question I had, without getting into the details to keep confidentiality, but was great. So they're having conversations with HR. Maybe HR is getting them to have a conversation with a manager. But are the founders, is the team talking about this openly? And I know, EJ, you said well-being's kind of like loaded, and I know these words can be loaded. But from my perspective, we need to bring them into the light. Like talk about burnout. Like how does burnout affect our performance? Like it's happening anyway. So I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts just on bringing some of this stuff into the light and re-educating about, well, it's there anyway. What does it mean?
From a coaching session, this person asked me what, because they're having a similar situation at their work where asked to work harder, almost like stepping on their throats to like, we don't want you to be happy, we want you to perform.
Push.
Yeah, and I remember when I was working at Bank of America, this was back when Lehman crashed, we went from a team of 80, I think 80 or 70, to all of a sudden there was only 14 of us.
Wow.
I know. It was like, wow.
Yeah.
But I saw that small team of people do amazing things. And I'll never forget the first conversation I had with them. I was like, this is fucked up. I'm not going to lie to you. This is fucked up. We're now going to have to do all this work.
We've got to name it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I need you guys to perform like you've not performed before. However, I don't want you to burn out. So whatever your limit is, you need to tell me and make sure that you call it out. And I saw this team like just have each other's back. We worked from we'd come into work 7:30, 7:45, and then we'd leave about 6:30. But what we did in that time was just crazy. And I'll never forget one of the ladies on our team, she was not feeling well and she'd come into work because she didn't want to let the other team members down. And I was thinking, you need to go home. And she was like crying, going, no, I can't let the other team members down. And that would never happen normally, where you'd come in. So we forced her to go back, but it was amazing to just watch everybody else just step in, carry it.
Beautiful.
And when she was ready, she came back in. So I do feel that, yeah, in those situations, if you call it out and you allow people, because they created that system. It wasn't me. Like everyone was like, okay, this is what we need to do. And everybody was working. You will be amazed when you give people that trust.
Agency.
And
treat them like adults is what I'm hearing.
Yes. Yeah. You'll be amazed what they bring back.
For people on audio, we're all making faces right now. Because I'm like, it's simple but not easy, right? And there's so many fears that if a leader like brings this up, they're like, oh my God, now I'm going to be responsible for everybody's burnout levels and everybody's this, that, and the other. When actually you said something which was really informative, useful, which is, getting them to recognize what their limits are. And then creating that support and we do it in our team, we'll say, what's one thing you need to do to invest in yourself today? Or what's your state of mind? Like we'll get real creative with the questions and we're really direct. We'll say, how's your mental health today? Because that's the shared language that we have around burnout, around anxiety, around a whole host of things. But it's the collective. That's what you want to encourage, right? It's like we're all supporting each other to perform in the infinite game. Was there anything you wanted to add, Ije?
I was just going to say that the rub in all of this, or like sort of like the nuances, that those questions you ask are so powerful, right? And having that as a daily practice as part of the culture is incredible. If there isn't a sense of trust, then people will respond falsely, right? Or they won't respond at all because they feel there's going to be some sort of retribution. So really, it's like at the anchor of all of this, it comes back down to that sense of trust. Like, do the folks on your team feel that they are seen, heard, and relatively understood? And if you don't have that as a foundation, nothing else you build on top of it will work.
It can't be gimmicky or little tactics. Go ahead.
And the example you just shared, Petra, is like, it shouldn't be HR coming to do this. It should be the leaders who like, the situation is fucked up. We're struggling too. This is what we're going through. Tell us what you need from us. But instead of coming and saying, oh, everything's amazing, we're going to I don't know. It's the way the leaders actually show up that is going to also create that, to allow the individuals to come and also take agency and say, okay, this is what we need. This is how we feel. If you want us to do this, this is what we need to perform.
When my business first started and I was like, so guys, how's your mental health? There's like that, right? People were like, what is happening? What are we doing in this job?
Was that in the memo? Did we get that?
Yeah. Was that in my contract? Like, what? Obviously, we're in a mental health business and it's very important that we lead by example. So, but the rule was, so at the beginning, we had a formal approach, which was at the top end of a team meeting, we would rotate. So, of course, I was the one who did it first as the CEO founder. And whoever asked the question, they had to go first. So it used to be that I would go first always, like just to get everyone like, all right. And I'd be real and I'd show them like, this is how real we could be, right? So this was the permission setting, right? Oh, I feel a bit triggered today. My trauma symptoms are through the roof and this thing happened and like, how are you, right? So immediately we're like, oh, we're allowed to do that, right? I know, we're next level. but then we had it. So then somebody might, and of course our business started before COVID. So it was like, we were all figuring this out together, but somebody might do something really simple and playful. Like, what's one thing that brings you joy? That's meaningful and gets to know each other. So it wasn't all like heavy, but then it might be, what's one personal challenge you're facing at the moment? You know, someone had a baby, a relationship thing, like, and then we brought in little pieces like that. So as much as you need the foundation first, I think those things helped build the foundation.
Absolutely.
Slowly, little layers, little bits of trust that I
Absolutely.
think now it's so normalized that people look at us and, but on the inside, we're like, yeah, my anxiety's through the roof, but I'm going to smash this keynote, you
Yes.
know?
See, I love that. And I love the point you make, Petra, because the point is that this is it's a living, breathing thing, right? It's like, you
Yes.
don't just build it and then, oh, we're good to go. We tick that off. It's perfect. Like, nothing more to do here. To your good point, it's those daily, continuous, repeatable things that you do that help to sustain it. So I love that point that you made.
I would love to learn, how did it grow through the pandemic? When you were asking, how's your mental health?
Oh, we have heard so many things from we know intimate details about each other's lives. We just do. We know everything. Well, within reason, but pretty much everything. And then we, you know, when sometimes the thing that pushed you out of your comfort zone becomes the new comfort zone, right? So then we kind of switched up. We didn't do it formally, but then everyone does it on Slack and everyone kind of checks in on each other. So we now have this organic, everybody's responsible for it. But at the beginning, it was the structure that enabled us to feel safe. And then we allowed it to have more oxygen and to just be what it is, which is, it's so normalized now.
I've got a question for you, actually, just on that point, because Chinazom, I don't know if you remember this conversation maybe 2 years back, where somebody in our circle said that they have no desire to get to know their colleagues in that way. And I remember sitting in that room and just feeling a little bit of sadness. Like, I could understand everyone has their own prerogative, but I felt, truthfully, I felt a little bit of sadness that was the energy. Like, that was a conclusion. Like, I'm working with you every day. I have no desire to get to know any of my colleagues in that way. So for someone with that mindset and that energy coming into a space, like, maybe they would self-select and exit out of that space, or they would never have shown up. But let's say they found themselves there and you've created this environment where there is that sharing and it's real. It's incremental, but it's building towards something wonderful. They would not engage, maybe, or, you know, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Have you come across that?
Of course. I mean, and if we zoom out on like a big corporate setting, like, and we've talked, Chinazom, about like safety, and sometimes it's not safe, especially if you're from a minority or from particular groups, and it may be used in certain ways. So it's not just, that's the thing about bringing your whole self. It's not just like bring everything, right? It's like we do bids for connection. We check if there's trust, right? But I remember when we've shrunk our team down, but when our team was bigger, we had a head of marketing. He won't mind me telling this story. Ex-military white male who came into this setup that was very like this already, and he was like, "What is happening?" Yeah, he was like, and he would be so visibly awkward. Bless him.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall.
Should I tell you how we solved it?
Tell me.
I was on the phone with this bro. I was like on the phone with him going, I got to know him one-to-one, because I was like, you need to know that this is where this is coming from and feel safe and understand that you can bring whatever you want. You don't have to bring everything, right? But I think we had long calls where I was just asked him questions and he asked me questions, and we kind of in a one-to-one, and I was the most senior person, right? So and I was like, so what stops you? Like, what's your conditioning? Like, what is, as a man coming from the military, like what's okay and what's not? Like, that was my curiosity. And and you know, and so we also frame things as brave conversations. Dudes like to be brave, right? So we don't necessarily talk like, be vulnerable, tell us your darkest stuff. We're like, hey, we're all like modeling bravery, because that's part of our mission in what we teach leaders to do. So that's why it's central to, like, if you want to work here, that's part of our mission, is modeling behavior. Chinazom, I feel like you're just ready to like.
So I have another thing I want to jump
imagine
into.
working with me, Chinazom.
Well, I could imagine how much people are having to share, but I could imagine this military guy thinking, how much do you want me to share? Because
I know.
are you ready if I share and everyone's like, whoa, that was too, okay.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, right? To check.
Yeah. But this was a conversation I was having with EJ where almost having to change the culture around performance. And I was working at this place, especially when I came to the US, and they used to have coffee chats. And this was when I was always wearing my coaching hat. And I was like, if I need to perform with you, I need to really know who you are as a human. So a coffee chat, everybody would kind of do that check-in, which is like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Oh, how are you doing? Da, 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 da. And then let's jump into it.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, no, I would literally talk with you for like 20 minutes. And at first, everyone was really uncomfortable. It's like, why is he doing? But the longer we did that, when it came to the shit hit the fan, I know you on a deeper level and you know me on a deeper level. So when we're on a call with a salesperson, shit hit the fan, we kind of know how we're going to react and there's a deeper connection. But so I find that you have to start changing that culture where when you have these calls or when you're checking in, you actually leave space for the real human being to come out.
That's it.
But if you're in this thing where you're just jumping from meeting to meeting, people they never connect on that level. They don't even know how to bring it out. So when the shit does hit the fan, you don't know any of the humans around you. And then that's when you go into this survival mode, like, oh, I don't know.
Each man for himself.
100. Yeah, each man for himself. That's exactly the emotional state you enter into. That's pretty tough.
And I think we need to change. If we want to start having sustainable performance, we need to start changing. There needs to be connection time for human to human, like really get to know the human so that when the shit hits the fan, you know who that person is, you know about their kids, you know what they care about, you know what they're passionate about. And chances are you're probably going to try and cover their back instead of thinking, oh no.
But you know what makes zero sense in our new world of work so far? There's a lot of things, but the thing that strikes me is technology is here to make our lives 1,000,000% more efficient. Right? There's no carrier pigeons or like a dude on a horse who's bringing you a message. It's like instant, right? That you can just like message each other. And so surely with AI and all the things, that should be giving us space to connect. Instead, we've layered on meetings and this procedure on top of everything since COVID, since being shit scared, layer. And we're like more frazzled than ever when I mean, like, is anyone see what's wrong with this picture? Yeah. You know, just in the structure of like back-to-back meetings and I've got to do my work in the evening. I don't know. What any thoughts just on the insanity that is the world of work? I mean, you both left, which is, I get it.
It's a crisis. Well, we're still dealing with it because our clients are in it. And, you know, it's a crisis. Like that back-to-back meeting thing is really, really, it's not even efficient. So there's a psychological.
It's not good for performance.
It's not good from a performance. There are not many places where it's good in terms of like looking at a lens. But, you know, to kind of, it's almost as if, here's my hypothesis, we're kind of hiding behind the technology.
Well, totally. Yeah. Because being with is scary.
It's a lot harder.
And
yeah, it takes a lot more energy. Even like when, you know, and I'm a huge fan of remote work. Chinazom will tell you, like, I am a fan, you know? So, but recently I've been noticing like there are some very specific intentional cases where coming together, energy to energy is so much more powerful. But then I also noticed, oh my goodness, this requires a lot more out of me because I'm absorbing your energy and sharing mine.
We're out of practice.
Yeah. And so I really think that when we had to come back out of our little caves after the pandemic ended, some of us may have overdone it in getting back in contact. And now we're kind of like, wow, okay, I'm still out of practice on this. I'm a little bit exhausted. Yeah. I'm more aware of the different energies. This feels uncomfortable for me. And I think we didn't have that level of awareness and sensitivity before. And we didn't have an alternative. So I'm seeing a lot of folks hiding behind technology and for lots of really valid reasons. But to your good point, yeah, it is a bit unfortunate because it should technically have created more space and freedom.
And hiding, beautiful point. Anything you'd add, Chinazom?
Well, I think hiding is such a beautiful point. And also, I don't know why in my head we should go back to carrier pigeon because it would calm down and give us more space. But there's something we need to change in our head about being efficient. And because we want to be efficient, that's why it's so easy to like, let's just
busy.
Get this done. Yeah, that busy thing.
That busy thing.
But the hiding thing is now I'm really craving human connection and human touch. But then I don't know whether it's because we're so out of practice that when we go and do it, we're like, oh my God, this takes so much out of us. But I feel like, I'm talking about myself now, I feel like I need to be more honest about when I'm around people that this is how I feel. I might go quiet for a little bit because I'm a bit out of practice, but I actually really want to be in your
And you'll
presence.
probably find that they're like me too, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
thanks. Like, this is what I'm struggling with or trying to figure out new boundaries for a new world, right?
Yeah.
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 That was a really good one. I hadn't thought of that before. Like, just like, can we meet up for coffee? But like, let's not talk for half of it. Is that okay? I just want to, be in your energy. And the person's like, absolutely, me too. That'd be.
I know.
I've gone.
I feel like through the pandemic, we didn't really come out and share exactly what's happened to us and the way we've changed. And what EJ just said, like, sometimes I'd really want to be around a friend, but I'm like, but I don't want to have the whole conversation for 2 hours.
Recap the past 2 years.
Yeah, I want to be around you, but
just to chill and have fun. Yeah. I went through a breakup recently, and I asked one of my friends, I was like, can we just like go to the movies and can you hold my hand? I was like, in a non-gay way. Could you just like, I said, my skin is thirsty.
Yes.
I need human touch. Yes. Thankfully, my friends understand me, so it was okay.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But that's to your point, right? Like, what do we need and how do we ask for it?
I love that. I love that.
I have two final questions, and I know we could talk all day about so many things. But so one question would always be like, what do you do to invest in yourself? And I'm sure you guys do lots of things, and they probably go a little bit like this, depending on stress and life. But because you're a couple, the question is, how do you notice that the partner needs to do something to pull back on their own energy or well-being?
I'm going to remind you that I know where you live. Okay. And I know I have your bank account details.
You can see the threats already, Petra. This is
okay. Because
I can see this is a threat.
He's just excited for this. He was like,
I really feel, Petra. I feel like my hands have been tied here. On live podcast, my hands have been tied. No.
Go ahead.
I'm going to be honest, because actually EJ just said something that blew my mind this morning, and she probably doesn't even know this. Because I'm always have my coaching hat on, and I talk about mental fitness, and I'm Mr. Mental Fitness. And what I didn't realize is I'm also being very judgy on my poor wife, who has been putting up with it for the last 8 years. Because now that she's turning the tables back on me, I'm like, God, that must have been annoying. I'm surprised that you haven't killed me or something. Yeah, but she said something that everybody's flow zone looks different.
Nice.
It never hit me because I'm always like, well, this is what mental fitness means. You're carving out time, you're in nature, you're that. But then I just realized like hers is completely different.
Everyone's different.
And I started to realize that you need to really honor yourself with what you need. And then if you're in a couple, you also need to accept what the other person needs. So actually yesterday we had a babysitter, and normally it's always like, we have to go out. And I kind of realized that's not what I needed, but I knew, so we went out and we went to a coffee shop. I was like, I really want to just read. So she had to just sit next to me while I was reading. I can imagine it was driving her crazy because she probably has 100 things that she wants to say. But she respected that we'd been out previously and we did what she wanted. So trying to be, I think earlier in the marriage, I might not have been as honest as that. We've talked so much.
And then it builds resentment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When we
but what was actually so lovely was, even though we went out and she just sat next to me, and I'm now starting to learn that before I would have taken myself away, I would have taken myself for a walk or somewhere. But now I can actually go with her and say, this is what I need in this moment. And I hope that she can say the same thing. So I feel like being as honest as possible of what you need. And this is where it's the big word for me now, is practicing self-love. You've got to ask yourself what you need and be okay with whatever it is. Like don't say, oh, that's weird, or why are you taking yourself away when whatever it is you need, honor it and share that with your partner so that you can actually
have your needs met by yourself or the other person, but that it's that two sides, right? The individual and the collective.
Yeah.
That wasn't so bad, EJ.
No, it wasn't. You are free.
I don't know what she had in her mind about what was
Well,
going to
I mean,
go
just
on.
on that point, though, I mean, it's an interest. I just want to like drill down into that because has been an evolution. Before, you would have gone off and maybe done a private walk by yourself. Meanwhile, I'm craving to like recap our day and like ideate and dream. And you're like, I've been talking all day. I'm a coach. I've been in sessions back to back.
Yeah,
I need some private
I shut
time. Yeah.
down.
But notice though where we've landed, right? Which I don't even know if you did intentionally, but you were like, do you want to join me to go do this? But I would like to read if that's okay with you. So like we're together, but we're not engaging at the same level, but we're still sharing energy. We're still having an experience together. Of course, I was on my phone writing articles and, on social media, trawling through the net, and he was like reading and really like expanding his mindset and like doing all this deep work, but we were sitting next to each other and we had that time together. And it was like nice middle ground. But I think the point I'm trying to raise is he was honoring himself, but he still was being aware of like, it seems like she kind of needs this specific type of thing a lot at this, juncture. Like it seems like at the end of the day, she needs to have some kind of connecting, but I need something different. And then we got to a middle place. So he's still honoring himself, but still being aware of like, what does she do well?
Yeah.
So that I didn't have to be like, I need this, And so that gives that balance. But yeah, but similarly, I don't feel compelled to read just because he wants us to be in the space together. You just do you, but
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Before I ask my last question, where can people find you? I know you've got dream catchers, you've got a book out, all the things. What's the best places for people to find you guys?
LinkedIn is where we do most of our, so you can either find EJ or you find myself on LinkedIn with our names. There's our website, www.dreamcatchersperformance.com. And also the podcast is where we're pumping out a lot of stuff on YouTube and on Spotify.
Beautiful. So my final question, which I ask every guest on the podcast, and we'll just fire around, don't overthink it. But the question is, what is the most radical change you think we need when it comes to well-being and the focus on mental health that we see in the world today? What's the most radical change?
That's it. No pressure. Chinazom.
Mic drop moment. Yeah.
What
do you reckon?
The most radical change for me is self-love. And it kind of hit me the other day that a lot of people don't love themselves, especially when it comes to survival mode. When it comes to survival mode, you will see that a lot of people will not take care of themselves, not even the things that they really care about, they won't take care of that. And then they achieve the performance, but then I call it, there's just bodies everywhere. And it always amazes me is why do we feel when it comes to survival, we like take care of ourselves is just, that's a luxury that goes out the window. And I really want people you've got to love yourself first, and you've got to give yourself what you need so that you can give to everybody else that you really care about around you. And I think if people can just grasp that fundamental truth, then it's going to change the way we practice well-being.
Get back to basics. Beautiful. EJ, anything you'd add?
I would just say owning your definition of success, just like being really clear about what is that, why does that matter to me? What do I want to invest to get that? What am I willing to sacrifice for that? And really owning that and not looking to others for validation of that.
Amazing. Amazing. Chinazom Ije, thank you so much for coming onto my show. I really appreciate it. And of course, we'll add everything into the show notes so people can connect with you on these amazing topics. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Petra. That was awesome.